Good afternoon from a rather glary day in Byron Bay, Northern Rivers of Australia. Today I'm going to be talking about vitamin D and brain shrinkage. I'm going to talk about grapefruit and our skin health, and I'm going to talk about melatonin and where it's made and what it does. I'm also going to talk about cryptocurrencies and what fungibility and scarcity mean to cryptocurrencies. As usual, today is based around my two fundamentals. Number one is that true health comes from living life in harmony with nature as consistent with the Gaia theory, which states that all living organisms and their inorganic surroundings, my inorganic surroundings, have evolved together as a single living system. Also consistent with a statement by neurophysicist Carl Friston that the anatomy of any living system must contain within it a model of the environment from which it is immersed. And the second principle, of course, is that Bitcoin is money for the people, by the people, part of the peaceful revolution. And today, again, inspired by the poem by J.R.R. Tolkien, The Riddle of Strider, which states that all who wander are not lost, and renewed shall be the sword that was broken. So if you're interested in grapefruit, if you're interested in sunlight in the brain, if you're interested in melatonin, where it comes from, keep watching. Hang on for the musical break. So today, even though it seems rather simple stuff I'm talking about, it actually is quite a complicated mind map. And as usual, I don't have any notes or preparation. I just talk while I walk on this absolutely amazing beach, getting my sunlight for the day. I've just had lunch at the Harvest Cafe in Newrybar. It's my favourite place to have lunch because of the support that organisation showed during some of the recent world problems with shutdowns, and how they supported their local community and local producers and growers. And I did my weekly shopping at the Mullumbimby farmers markets, again supporting local producers and artisans. Now I've come down to make the video. So let's start talking about vitamin D from the sun, with a recent article which showed that people who are low in vitamin D have much lower volumes of the white matter of their brain and the hippocampal area of the brain. And the hippocampus is in the temporal lobes of the brain, and it's responsible for learning and memory and emotions, and those areas are much smaller. And so that's why it's very important to be getting, for me, to be out getting some sunlight so I get the vitamin D. And of course I get the vitamin D from the sun because that's where nature intends us to get it from. And that's why I think some of the recent studies about vitamin D and viruses have been shown that high dose oral vitamin D supplements are not working as we hoped they would. It's because you want to get that entourage effect from the sunlight, because not only do we get vitamin D from the sun, remember, we're also activating T cells that are running through our blood vessels in our skin. We're getting brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which, as we now know, helps our brain grow and form new pathways. We're getting serotonin, we're getting dopamine, we're getting endorphins. And I find it fascinating because if you think about the evolutionary theory, how that we started off as a species, well, that's a difficult thing to say, but part of our development as a species was our migration from the African savanna to the coast. And what did we find on the coast? Well, we found a lot of sunlight with the vitamin D. We found seaweed, which just gave us the iodine, and we also found seafood as a very easy food source, particularly shellfish like oysters, which provided us with zinc and the omega-3s to cause that rapid expansion of our brain. And remember that the omega-3 DHA that we get from seafood is the fat which converts the light energy into electrical energy for my brain, so my brain can tell what time it is, which is a circadian, what we call a circadian rhythm. Now, talking about the circadian rhythm then leads us on to melatonin. And there was a recent paper out just last week really summarizing the incredible effects that melatonin has right through the body. We've always traditionally thought that melatonin was produced in the pineal gland of the brain, and it resulted in our sleep. We've always known that. But now we know that melatonin is not just made in the pineal gland. Plants have melatonin. Mitochondria make melatonin. In fact, melatonin is probably made by the mitochondria primarily because we know that the bacteria, which eventually turned into our mitochondria, can produce melatonin. And that's why plants have circadian rhythms, and we have circadian rhythms. And not only is melatonin about the circadian rhythm, so remember, it's not just made in the pineal gland, it's made in lots of cells throughout the body, including our 1 quadrillion mitochondria. It acts on our brain to clean the brain out at night while we're asleep of all the damaged cells and mitochondria, puts us to sleep. It's great for the microbiome of the skin. And now we're finding that all organs have a beneficial effect from melatonin, which is why it's very important for me to look after my own production of melatonin by wearing blue light blocking glasses at night and getting out in the sun as much as I can, and making sure at night that I cover up my skin from artificial light, because I have the same receptors for light in my skin that I have in my eyes. So very important that I cover up my skin if I have artificial light, or I use red lights in my house, because that kind of approximates the red light of sunset that would normally get exposed to, or the red light of fire that we would be exposed to in the evenings as a species. So then that talk then leads me on to talk about, well, if I'm going to spend a lot of time on the beach getting vitamin D on my skin, how do I protect it? And that's where it gets really interesting for me, because I spend a lot of time with traditional populations. I worked for a long time in the highlands of Papua New Guinea. At Goroka Base Hospital, and I spent a lot of time working with the wonderful people on Niue Island, which is just to the west of Tonga, and also did some training with the Apache in Arizona. And it doesn't matter which of those traditional populations I lived with, they all had a way of protecting their skin from the sun, and they used their knowledge of plants for that, and also they used animal fats as well, but particularly plants, because they realized that plants have to protect themselves from a lot of sunlight. In fact, I wrote last week about new scientific research showing how plants have a switch that they switch on or switch off when they think that they're getting exposed to too much sun. It's fascinating. So they use plant oils a lot to protect themselves from the sun. So of course in the Pacific Islands, coconuts, which is just such an amazing plant to me, because what other plant can grow on a beach and convert seawater into coconut water, just amazing, is used a lot by the Pacific Islanders. And that's why in my skin formula, the Promethean skin formula, there's coconut oil as well as Byron Bay olive oil and avocado oil. But uniquely, there's also Byron Bay seaweed that I forage down here, which is infused into the coconut oil, because seaweed we're now not discovering is not just an amazing sustainable food for us, surprise, surprise, but also has skin protective effects. So I put that lotion, that skin tonic on my skin to nourish it. Also contains gotu kola, which is a very popular plant in India that most people grow, called the tiger herb, because we know that Indian tigers roll in gotu kola when they get skin wounds to help them heal. But when you think about it, that's where we've got a lot of our health information from watching plants and from watching animals. In fact, yoga, if you go back and look at all Patanjali's yoga work and look at the yoga poses, most of the yoga poses have come from looking at animals in the wild. That's why they're named pigeon pose and cat, dog, turtle, eagle pose, because Patanjali and the people who came before him developed a lot of their yoga asanas from watching the animal kingdom. So we've learned a lot from animals, we've learned a lot from plants. So there's seaweed and gotu kola in my skin tonic, but also you want to have foods as well internally which build up in your skin to protect your skin from the sun. And in summer we get a lot of tomatoes, because the biggest phytochemical which has been scientifically shown to protect our skin from the sun when we consume it is lycopene. Now, of course, nature's very kind and it knows that. So it gives us a lot of tomatoes, which is the primary source of lycopene for us in summer. Now we're in autumn here in Australia, coming into winter, and what's coming into season now is perhaps one of my favourite fruits, which is ruby grapefruit. Now ruby grapefruit, we know, are high in naringenin, which I use as part of my weight loss program that I run. But naringenin has also been associated with reducing damage to the skin and skin cancers in scientific research when it's consumed orally. And grapefruits also have high levels of lycopene as well. So you get a lot of tomatoes in summer for the lycopene to protect the skin, and then transfer onto grapefruit, which is seasonal in winter, with naringenin and lycopene. Now, interestingly, I usually get my organic grapefruit from Eden Health Foods in Mullumbimby, and I have friends with the guys that run it, and they always wondered why I came in every week and bought so much ruby grapefruit, and I told them how I was juicing it every day, and they're now telling me they've started doing it and they're all addicted to grapefruit juice in the morning. So that's a nice addiction to have, to get that lycopene and naringenin. Right, finally, what I want to talk about. I want to talk about scarcity and fungibility. So Bitcoin is scarce, only 21 million, I've discussed that. Dogecoin, which is going nuts at the moment for unknown reasons, people want to get rich and buy Lamborghinis. I'm very happy driving old beat up Toyota Hilux. I'm here for the revolution. Dogecoin, you can make as many Dogecoin as you like. There's no limit to it, which is kind of just as bad as printing dollars whenever you need them. So a good monetary system has scarcity. So, and that's why Bitcoin is now thought by experts in the field to be a great new monetary system because of its scarcity. 21 million, you say, that's not many. Remember though that Bitcoin is divided, each Bitcoin is dividable up into 100 million Satoshi. So nobody's buying Bitcoin except for Michael Saylor. The rest of us are accumulating some Satoshis when we can. So scarcity is very important as a monetary system, which is why Bitcoin is a good idea long term and Dogecoin might not be. And the next thing I want to talk about was fungibility, because fungibility means that every item you have exactly the same. Every $5 bill I've got in my pocket is the same as the $5 bill you've got in your pocket. So Bitcoin is fungible. It's exactly the same. My Bitcoin, if I had a Bitcoin, is the same as your Bitcoin. My Satoshi is the same as your Satoshi, directly swappable. Now, the opposite of fungible is non-fungible. And what you're seeing now is the growth of the NFT market, which is non-fungible tokens. And this is where something is incredibly unique. There's only one Mona Lisa painting. There's millions of prints of the Mona Lisa, but they're worthless. Because you can make any, as we said before with scarcity, you can make as many prints of the Mona Lisa as you can. But there's only ever going to be one Mona Lisa. I could paint a Mona Lisa, wouldn't be very good, wouldn't be worth anything. But the original Mona Lisa is worth a lot of money. So this is what non-fungible means. It's something which is very unique. And we're now moving into the NFT market, which is going to be huge, particularly around art, music, sports. I mean, you're going to be able to get an NFT token of the first ever Michael Jordan dunk in the NBA. Now, they'll make it special. It might be digitally signed by him and it'll be very unique. And sure, you can watch Michael Jordan do a dunk on YouTube, but it's not going to be yours. And now with Tom Brady starting his company Autograph, which is going to be about sports NFTs, and you've got poker NFTs and you've got art NFTs, this is a market for digital scarcity. You're going to have something which is incredibly unique. So that's where fungible is good. You want your Bitcoin to be fungible, you want your Bitcoin to be scarce, but also there's going to be a huge market for non-fungible tokens, which are going to be unique art, music, poetry, assets that people want to get. So it's a fascinating time that we live in. I'm going to talk about this time in 5,000 years, explosion of technology, explosion of health information, the change in the monetary system, the problems we're having with viruses in the world and our immune system. It's 5,000 years I'll be talking about this, just like they talk about the Roman Empire. All right, that's enough from me today. I'm going to go get my shirt off and actually get some sun. Put my skin tonic on, it's just on my face at the moment. I'll see you next week. Peace and love. Oh, I just forgot, if you want to join me and some other very motivated people on a health journey, you can come and join us on my Patreon page, www.patreon.com/Dr. Greg Emerson, where I write articles many times a week about health, and I also take at least weekly yoga classes and cold thermogenesis classes where we learn to control our autonomic nervous system and we multiply our mitochondria, increase our brown fat and water, weekly usually in the wilderness by some sort of waterfall. And finally, if you're interested in my skin tonic, it's now available on my online website, www.mitochondrialyoga.com. See you next week.